In my previous devotion, I mentioned that I got significantly out of shape, having gained a whole lot of weight. There were two major factors in this. One was overeating, and the other was a lack of physical activity. Now, upon my wife's urging, I went on this diet. It was the South Beach diet. This diet was absolutely brutal. It required that I cut out all fatty foods, carbs, and anything sweet that also included fruit. It was then that I realized that I was addicted to sweets. The most brutal part of the diet was in the first 2 weeks. After I was permitted to have, right after that, the 2 weeks, I was permitted to have one slice of whole grain bread per day and a portion of brown rice. That still wasn't easy. And like I said, it was brutal, yet it worked. I shed weight like crazy. People at the church did not know what was going on with me and were asking my wife if I was sick or something. So how did I get into this mess? This is not an excuse, but months prior to this, I had broken my left wrist, and the doctor said I needed to keep my hand elevated like this. And so the easiest way to do that was to sit down. So I would sit on the couch, keep my left arm elevated like this, and began watching tea and running back and forth to the kitchen. The routine went like this. I went for a glass of sweet tea and some potato chips. I'd get back on the couch, and then I continued to watch TV and eat all of that stuff and drink the iced tea. When that was done, I'd go back again. This time I'd take some sweet tea and some chocolate chip cookies or some sweets of some sort and go back and do the same thing. Well, this routine went on over and over and over again. Well, before I realized it, I was where I was, but I repeated this over and over again, this whole process, never realizing that was what was happening to me. More than my body enlarging exponentially, I was developing a habit, or might say an addiction, to junk food. Now, while this fondness of sweets and potato chips was always there, it was always kind of part of me, and I think most people, it had never become my master. And now it was. Paul's words explain the situations. He wrote to the Corinthians about this, and he said this. He said, "All things are lawful for me, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful for me, but I will not be dominated by anything." In other words, I won't be mastered by anything. The entire methodology of the South Beach diet was to break the mastery of certain foods over me. That is the addiction. In particular, that with carbs and sweets. You see, gluttony seems to be the one thing that we as believers seem to condone in our own lives. Yet as the writer of Proverbs stated, he stated it this way, "The glutton will come to poverty, and the slumber will clothe them with rags." The issue is that a poor diet will affect one's physical condition and thus their energy levels and mobility. And ultimately, it happens gradually that the person affected does not even notice it happening until it's too late. So what's the solution? Well, don't be mastered by food. That's the simple thing to say, but all food is lawful, even carbs and sweets and sweet tea. However, is it all profitable? Food is permissible and necessary for us, but it should never control our lives. Scientifically, it is simple but a complex issue. It goes like this. When you consume more calories than you use, the excess goes on as storage, excess weight. Certain foods will pile on the calories excessively. And I'm not saying that one must cut out certain foods or something that you like, but if food or certain foods become an addiction, something needs to be done to maintain a healthy balance. Now, one last word. If you realize that a diet is necessary, do your homework. I would seek the Lord in prayer about this and then discuss the issue with a health specialist, including your doctor, especially if you have a chronic medical issue of some sort. But we need to do something because it affects our health. But diet alone is not the number one problem either. It's part of it. The other problem is exercise. We'll talk about that later.